Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful Monday. It is always an honor and a pleasure to be here behind the mic, bringing you some amazing guests and bringing you some amazing conversations. And of course, tonight is no different. But before we jump in, as always, guys, I just want to say thank you to each and every single one of you for making My EdTech Life what it is today. Thank you so much for all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for following us on YouTube. As you know, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, please make sure you visit our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, subscribe. We would definitely appreciate that. And as always, like I said, I'm very thankful for all the feedback and, just really all the connections that we've been able to make through this podcast and bringing you some amazing content. So I am excited for today's show. Terence was somebody that I spoke to probably about a month and a half ago or around there. And I am just delighted to have had the opportunity to speak to him, to talk to him about the work that they're doing. And I was very impressed. I was just like, wow, this is an amazing platform. But I won't steal Terence's thunder at all whatsoever. But I would love to introduce you to Terence Tan. Terence, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on your show, and it's an honor to be here. I've been following My EdTech Life for a while, so it's a great pleasure to be also here on as a guest and have the chance to connect to your audience.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited that you're here. Like I mentioned, it was great. And the one thing that I love about LinkedIn and just the power of social media is just the power of connecting and really linking up. And I just want to thank you for sending me a message on LinkedIn and saying like, hey, we have something that you might want to be interested in or checking out and so on. And I just want to thank you for reaching out because that's really what I do. I'm very open about people reaching out, and sometimes they share things and I'm like, wow. So immediately after that I was like, hey, here's my calendly, let's see when we can go ahead and get you on the show so we can have this conversation. So thank you so much for being here and taking some time out of your day, and I'm just really excited to really dive into today's conversation. So Terence, for our audience members that are joining us live and those that will be catching this on the replay who are not familiar with you or your work yet, can you please give us a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space? And then we'll dive into the world of Eddy for teachers.
Sure, yeah, but just quick comment on what you mentioned about connections and all. So I'm actually quite close collaborators with Eric, one of your former one of the founders who appeared on your show, and I was talking to him about his experience, and that kind of got me started with reaching out. Eric is a close friend and a collaborator with edm8ker for a while, so yeah, um, just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. Hey,
But
you know what? Shout out to Eric. So thank you, Eric. He was definitely a great guy. So thank you so much.
yeah, he's doing awesome stuff. Yeah, but a bit more about myself. So I'm originally from Singapore, where edm8ker is based. After college, I was teaching in the education system in Singapore for a while, teaching English and history. And I think a lot of people have this impression of the Singaporean education system as like high quality, like we put a lot of funding and resources into it, and that's true to some extent. But as I went on there in the education system, I realized there were some issues and some things that needed attention to that are better responded to outside the formal education system. I was teaching for a couple of years, and I was working in the Ministry of Education, working on higher education policy. So that was a great opportunity to get me connected to employers. I was speaking to employers quite a bit and asking them a lot about, what are the skill sets and competencies that, you want graduates to have when they come in into the industry, right? Speaking to employers about what they think um, students should be taught and students should learn, both at the K-12 as well as higher education levels. And one thing I realized was a lot of the employers didn't talk about math or English or anything subject specific. A lot of the conversations around competencies, like skills, as well as dispositions, right? Creativity, resilience. I mean, there are a lot of these, like people like to say, soft skills, right? That we take for granted, but employers are not seeing it. And that got me down the road of thinking about, what else does the education system need to have in order to make sure that our students are fit for the future of work? And this is a future of work that we might not know how it exists like. We might not know the shape or the form of it, but we need to prepare them for it. Now, this is a huge undertaking. And I think, various different stakeholders need to come together. But it made me realize, how can I create an impact from outside the system, right? And what can I do outside the system that would be impossible to do within the education system? So I joined edm8ker 1 year ago, working on programming in Singapore, um, doing teacher programs, professional development, maker education programs for students. And just in June, I moved to the US, where I'm based in Boston right now. So a lot of my work right now is managing our clients here in the US, but also coming up with our own proprietary tools and software to help teachers grapple with exactly what maker education is and to help it, how it can be relevant to their teaching and learning.
Excellent. I love it. I mean, it's such a great backstory, and you hit on so many things that are absolutely very important. And of course, like you mentioned, what people deem as soft skills. And I think oftentimes we truly are forgetting about those skills a lot within the classroom. And so I love what you're talking about as far as making more of a space for maker movements, or just really STEM and STEAM, and the collaboration, the communication in the classrooms, and all of that great stuff, because that is something that is truly very powerful. And being able to witness that myself, being in the classroom and being very hands-on and allowing students to do a lot of the hands-on approach to their learning and creating wonderful learning experiences, really does something in a way that it really helps the students take that experience, and actually that experience becomes part of them, that as they go on from year to year, it's something that they can look back on and continue to reap from and bring into whatever grade level, whatever curriculum they may be doing, because all those skills are definitely cross curricular. So I'm very excited about that passion that you have and that you're bringing, because I honestly think that it's something that is very important. And those are definitely the skills of the future of work that we're seeing. And you're absolutely right. I've had other guests that have come on stating that many employers are looking for candidates that have these skills. So I love the fact that you are found a solution that can help teachers maybe not feel as overwhelmed, as far as introducing like a maker activity within the classroom. So I want to ask you, before we jump in a little bit more, at the what is the core philosophy right now, that an approach for Eddy for teachers, as far as maker education?
Yeah, so Eddy for Teachers is basically a product that edm8ker, my company, has actually come up with. We launched in June, but I think it's also useful to look at the core philosophy of the whole company, because the philosophy of the product kind of stems from it, right? So edm8ker as a whole, it's dedicated to empowering educators to promote a maker culture in every school by leveraging the full potential of technology so that every child has access to a brighter future. So I think there are a few key words there that, it sounds like word soup, but a few key phrases that I like to pull out. The idea of educator empowerment stems from the notion of, like, we could run, and we have run student facing programs. We come into schools, we run programs with 200, 300 students. But, at the end of the day, when we go back, the students are not going to be benefiting as much from maker education, right? It's probably a more sustainable route to train teachers and equip them with the tools that they need to actually take it back to their classroom, right? And that requires trust and partnerships on different levels. It requires trust with the school administration to say, I'm going to carve out certain number of hours of professional development because I believe that this is important and that you guys can help to deliver. It requires a lot of trust on the part of teachers to be able to abandon or pivot from practices that they've been doing for the past 10 or 20 years to a new way of doing things. But we think this idea of educator empowerment is something that's really important and that we've come to realize since the start of our journey. The idea of a maker culture, that's something that's been around for so long. Um, Ever since we were founded, the idea, our co-founders are kind of pioneers in the maker movement in Southeast Asia. We saw the benefits that it could bring to students as a whole, and we tried to kind of import that and adapt that to our educational system in Singapore. And the last bit is about technology, right? How do we leverage technology to be maker centric? Because a lot of technology that's being used these days is kind of, you either follow a recipe, step one you do this, step two you do this, or it's used to for like for students to an online quiz. Or I guess I'm trying to say is a lot of technology has the potential to be used in maker centric ways, but there's not a lot of focus on how to do that the best way, right? So that's another key area of our focus.
I love that. And one of the things that you said right now towards the end, I think that's something that I'm seeing now because, right now, before there was a great movement, like from 2017, when I first started, in the classrooms and really bringing in a little bit more of the STEM, STEAM, robotics, and just being able to create and creating a little maker space for my students. It just seems like after a while, like I haven't seen too much of it. I know it's there, and I know that there's some great friends that are doing some great things within their schools and within their districts, but it's something that you don't hear as much about. And I think that as the technology is continually moving forward, like right now, AI, it's been over a year, and that is big right now, and that's what everybody's talking about. But I agree with you that yes, you do have the potential of, doing so many things with the tech or with your computers, but I think we are missing out on that component of the hands-on critical thinking, collaborative aspect of a maker activity where it really goes beyond just the normal, I would say, lesson plan that you would have, but where students are actually invested. And one thing that I love that you mentioned was that teacher empowerment. And I think that's something that is very important as well, being able to train the teachers, help them feel empowered, because then that kind of goes down and trickles into the students as well. And you're creating this great environment for that's conducive to learning and great for learning experiences, that the teacher almost all of a sudden becomes more of that learning engineer, and the students are able to collaborate in that final product. And I think that's so important. And I really do feel that maybe we haven't talked about it too much as of late. And maybe it's something that we definitely need to revisit and readdress so we don't miss out on those skills, as well. So tell me a little bit more as far as, we talked about the collaborative skills. We talked about how the maker movement and the activities that are around, what Eddy for Teachers offers, prepare students for the 21st century. So tell us a little bit more about that. What is that end goal and that vision for EdMaker to help our students develop those 21st century skills?
Right. I think yeah, it's that's a great question, right? So I think we see the future of work skills in two ways, right? And this is probably oversimplifying it a bit, but there are technical skills, right? Technical skills like how to use certain technologies, how to manipulate and interact with artificial intelligence, extended reality, human computer interactions. And these are technical skills that employers are definitely looking for. I remember reading a World Economic Forum article, a report actually published this year that says that, well, it's within the top three or top five. So these are skill sets that employers are definitely looking for. And then on the other hand, there are these non-technical skill sets. I mean, I know some people who loathe at the idea of soft skills because the idea is that they're not soft. You have to practice them, you have to get better at them, and you have to hone it, right? Um, but these are skills like creativity, being able to respond positively to failure, the ability to come up with innovative solutions to challenging problems. And these are also skill sets that are honed so well by maker education. When done well, I think maker education is particularly transformative in helping students kind of see not just where they should go, but also kind of learn from each other and collaborate with one another to come up with something that's more than the sum of the parts. So one example would be like I guess an example that illustrates these two things, right? One of our lesson plans on Eddy, and if you go to eddyforteachers.com, you'll be able to search for it. It's called Fraction Genius. It's one of my favorite lesson packages, and in it, what students are doing is they're creating an AI app, a simple AI application that can distinguish between different fractions, right? So in doing so, they're learning math, but they're also learning the fundamentals of AI, how to train a simple app, how to test it with real data, and they're actually learning how to troubleshoot and work with one another. Because as anyone who's worked with AI or any emerging technology before, there's so many things that can go wrong, right? So that's an example of the kind of end goal that we want, right? We want students to have these technical skill sets, but also to be able to respond positively when they meet challenges, when they face issues. How do they troubleshoot without just throwing their hands up and say, I'm not going to do this, right? Yeah, in a nutshell, that's that.
Yes, no, and absolutely, and that is such a very important skill because oftentimes it just seems like if we don't get our and this happens even as adults too now, with as far as much as tech has, moved forward, it's like if we don't get our video loaded right away or we get something and like the troubleshooting, we just get frustrated. But this is something that is a valuable skill for students to learn. Now, before we continue, Terence, I want to bring in a comment. My friend Tanya Gonzalez, big shout out to Tanya Gonzalez for joining us here. And she has a comment here. It says, a lot of educators don't have the freedom to explore or play with technology integration in their classroom due to the fact that some leaders have the teach to the test mentality. So, Terence, let me ask you something. So, how can Eddy for teachers, if we do have some of those leaders that Tanya is talking about, and which I have myself been uh, a witness to, what can we do to maybe help change that mindset? Because one of the things that you did mention earlier was, the mission too is to help teachers to be able to adapt, to this, obviously 21st century skills, but to be able to adapt their lessons. So, can you talk to us maybe a little bit, or maybe give us a little story or success story of how maybe Eddy for teachers can help those, those types of leaders that are just teach to the
Sure.
test mode?
Yeah, great. It's funny that you mentioned that. I just got off a call with an administrator from a school in Florida that we're working on a pilot with, and I think a lot of the a lot of the conversations I'm having with administrators is around um, how the technology cannot just be used innovatively in the classroom, but also how can we gather data from the technology um, to inform student learning. So let me give an example, right? Um, I talk about one of the lessons that we have, which users, where the students are creating AI apps or um, an AI app, right, that can distinguish between different fraction types, right? So one of the administrators is saying, well, is there any way we can pull the data from the backend to actually showcase what students are doing and to allow for formative evaluation? And I think as we grow, one of the things that we do want to do is form these partnerships with technology that we think have great potential to be infused into the Maker at classroom, to be able to pull some of this data, what their students are creating, what students are making, um, into students' portfolios, report cards, LMS. Like, I think that kind of ecosystem is kind of where we're heading towards. And I think that will help to move the needle a little when it comes to assessment of student learning, right? Because that's a big thing. The other bit about it is the idea of what are you bringing to the table, and I think for a lot of administrators, it's quite an uphill challenge to prove that you have something to bring to the table, right? Because no one is kidding ourselves. We're not a huge company, right? So a lot of the value that we bring is in customization, right? A lot of the conversations I'm having with administrators is about what are you teaching, what's the curriculum that you have, how can we design content on Eddy that helps you use that content but enhance it with technology? How can we swap certain elements around of the original content to infuse maker-centric learning activities while at the same time maintaining the learning objectives? And that's something that I think only folks who have been in a classroom before will be able to relate to. So our team is made up of mostly educators because of that reason. Because one of the ways that we realize that we are able to get buy-in is to show that we can walk the talk from a curriculum standpoint. And this is the same whether it's in the US or Singapore, right? Administrators will ask that question.
That is great. And I love, how transparent you are in the conversations that you're having, with school districts, but also, just describing your team and the experience that you're bringing in. That is something that is very wonderful because oftentimes we don't know who's on the other side of a platform. We don't know, who is writing this curriculum and years of experience or what their mindset is or, and everything. So it's very important that we definitely get something that is, teacher created or teacher centered in that sense, and somebody that really understands, what's going on in the classroom. So kind of leading up with that, again, returning to the point of being able to empower teachers, can you tell us a little bit about how Eddy for Teachers or EdMaker is helped through these programs, and especially Eddy for Teachers? How does it go about creating that empowerment for teachers in the classroom?
Right. So Eddy is essentially, in its current incarnation, it's essentially a platform with lesson packages that do a few things, right? Um, Lesson packages that infuse maker education or maker-centric learning into the teaching, into lessons, right? At the same time, it brings in emerging technology domains. So we have around 4 or 5 emerging tech domains, from AI to extended reality to coding and programming, so far and so forth, right? And what we actually support teachers in doing is to give professional development, not in terms of how to use Eddy, because anyone can go up there and download. It's a pretty much fast free platform, but more from the perspective of how do you integrate technology in maker-centric ways into the classroom, right? So far, in the pilots that we have done, what we've gotten teachers to do is to download our lesson packages, and then our advice is our way of kind of doing professional development in a way is sort of coaching them how to adapt the lesson plans for their needs. So, for example, one of the teachers was saying, "Oh, I want to integrate. I want to keep track of students' Lexile scores. I want to differentiate instruction according to my weaker readers, according to my stronger readers." We then come in and we say, "Okay, well, with this technology that we're actually featuring in the lesson package, you can do these things to change the Lexile scores, and that'll help you as well, right?" Because there's no one size fits all for content, at least now in the current incarnation. With Gen AI, which is, we can talk about that later, it might change, but currently the lesson packages are designed as is. That being said, we know that, like I said, no one size fits all. So a lot of the consulting and a lot of the individual professional development that we do with teachers is advising on how they might be able to adapt the lessons for the classroom. And I think we found that particularly resonant with many teachers who um, might be, and rightfully so, a little bit wary of Gen AI, like churning out these like lesson packages that they
Yes.
can probably like implement, but there's probably a loophole here or inaccurate content there. What we're trying to do is put a face, like you said, put a face behind who's creating these packages and say that we are here, we're on board with you, and we're here to give you the support you need to make these lessons a reality in your classroom.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned a couple of things there too, as well, that I often, when I do get to talk to platforms or get to talk to founders and so on, many times what happens is it's all about the standards and standards-based curriculum. And so oftentimes there may be a platform that is, hey, this is what we offer, but yet it's not tied to those standards or the standards that we may be adhering to here within our state. So is that something that Eddy does offer as far as, let's say, here in Texas? Is there a way to customize what it is that you have available to to meet the needs of our curriculum here in Texas or in any state for that matter?
Yeah, so far the lesson packages that we have are aligned to NGSS, Common
Mhm.
Core, and ISTE standards.
Okay.
Not aligned to TEKS yet, but that's definitely in the works as we have more teachers coming in from Texas. I think that's something that's in the pipeline. So um, if there's demand and we see, we have users from Texas, that's a alignment that we can easily make. I think a big rationale also why we want standards to be incorporated is the idea that, maker education shouldn't be something that we bolt on as an after school program. I think we want to encourage more teachers to be doing this within the classroom, within their regular curricular hours, which means that we also need to meet them where they are and, be very receptive to the standards that they definitely need to hit. And I think with our pilot programs, what we've shown is that, it is possible to meet some of these crucial subject standards, right? Because you're using some of our resources to supplement um, instruction that you're already doing. So, for example, one of the writing lessons on Eddy is going to be used to supplement a lesson, well, on writing, right? So, you teach explicitly what are the different stages of doing an expository essay. And then the tech lesson on Eddy is used to consolidate their learning, right? So, our teachers, and I think many teachers are already doing this, right? Picking, matching from different sources, figuring out whether stuff from Khan Academy or this platform is useful and piecing it together into a coherent whole. The idea is if we don't have standards attached to our stuff, it's going to be so much more challenging for them to do that. And I think that'll also make kind of teacher uptake of our platform a little bit more challenging.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. And I have my friend Tanya here who is really excited. She says, this is the first time I hear about Eddy, and she would definitely explore more tonight. And believe me, she will definitely explore more because Tanya is amazing and she definitely loves to embrace the tech and really help her students, which kind of leads me to my next question. I know we've been talking a little bit more on a little bit on the teacher side and, a little on or a little bit more on the teacher side and very little on the student side. But my next question to you is, I'm all about amplifying creativity. And I know as far as, maker movement and just having a maker space, it's all about, the collaboration, the cooperation, but also some of that is definitely the creative component for students. So I want to ask you, how does EdMaker, or here in this case, Eddy for Teachers, foster creativity for our young students that would be taking part in any of these lessons that you have available?
Yeah, so I think in the realm of maker centric learning, there's this phrase called high ceilings and white walls. So the idea that you have high ceilings, so students of differing abilities or different grade levels can actually um, you know challenge themselves, and you have white walls so that students have a great degree of creativity and variation in producing content, right? So we try to do that in all of our lesson packages. I think what we realize is that for first and second graders, it's a bit more challenging to devise maker centric online emerging tech content because at that age, a lot of the focus is on understanding how the tech works. But from third grade and onwards, all of our lessons give students a lot of exposure to, well, give them a lot of flexibility to in terms of the content that they're creating. And one way that we do that is we're very intentional and deliberate about the types of technology and tools that we are picking up. So I guess this is a not so subtle plug to Eddie, to Eric and Megaminds, for example, right? We connected over his online maker spaces. I saw it and I was like, that's a great tool, right? We should be creating more content on it. And that's how we led to our collaboration where we developed a bunch of lesson plans related to Megaminds and using their technology. So I think part of it is like picking the right technology, right? And the other part of it is devising the lesson flow that is maker centric in a way that it gets students creating with that technology instead of giving them a step by step, I guess, recipe to follow. And we try to do that by being very deliberate and intentional about the types of guidance we're giving them. Right. So for some of our lesson packages, not all, but we're trying to ramp that up. The tech tutorial that we show students, that is used by the teacher to show students how to explore the technology, is done in a way that you hit play, the video runs, and after that, after the video is done, the students should know and be familiar enough with the technology to kind of tinker with it in an open-ended fashion. um, we d- we think that this is, and we've gotten feedback from teachers that this is the way that they want to introduce that technology to the student in the form of a video, right? Whereas some teachers might prefer to introduce it in terms of showing it on their screen while they are manipulating or while they're playing around with the technology. But the idea is that we shouldn't be telling students that step one, this is what you're going to do. Step two, if you do that, it should be just to introduce the technology to them. But the task that they're given, what we call a creation of an artifact or a product, that should be open-ended as far as possible. And then one big challenge that we had initially is how to scope that product in a way that's respectful of the standards and objectives of the lesson, but at the same time also give students sufficient independence and creativity. And I think so far we've managed to find a good balance, but that was an iterative process.
There you go. But that's good. And I love what you said. There's so much to see here because right now, in a little bit, I'm going to definitely share my screen and I want to share what Eddy has and, going back and looking into that fraction genius just so people can get a little bit familiar of what is available. Now, I know that what you have available here is amazing because it's great for the teachers to be able to walk through it and also for the students to be able to walk through. So I want to ask you though, just so our audience members can know, within Eddy, it's not just one particular app that is available to use or to create a lesson or for simulations. You have several apps available. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think we've hit a point whereby initially we were exploring tons of apps out there that were quite were very suitable and very appropriate for maker-centric learning. So we have around, well, I want to say like 10, 15, 20 different apps out there. But at the same time, what we heard from our users is also that, a teacher doesn't want to learn 10 or 20 different apps in order to turn your classroom into online makerspace. So we're leaning harder on those apps that lend themselves particularly well. So, for example, design tools like Canva, simple AI app creation tools like Teachable Machine, Megaminds is definitely out there, CoSpaces. So these are things that are built from the ground up for student creation. So these are the things we're going to lean a bit harder on.
There you go. And that's great. And I love that you took a lot of consideration into that because like you're absolutely right. I mean, there could be that tech, teachers get tech burdened and they feel
Fatigue, yeah.
overwhelmed. Yeah, and that tech fatigue and having to learn a new platform, new logins, and then the students are working on new platforms and so on. That could definitely, it causes a lot of stress in that sense. So I'm loving the fact that taking that feedback and saying, what, let's really find those particular apps that really do lend themselves into the maker space and into the maker movement that are easy for students to use to create, but also easy for the teachers, or some teachers may already be very familiar with those apps. So again, that's wonderful, and that's good to hear, that you really do lean into teacher feedback and what they give you. So, that way it makes the product a lot better. My friend Tanya here also says, don't
Yes.
forget Adobe Express as well.
We have a couple of lessons using Adobe Express. It's great. So I mean, Adobe Express is actually quite similar to Canva. So
Mhm.
I think that's one of those decisions where we have to say, okay, we're going to use this product because two of them have very similar features, but maybe one of them is better for like sharing or collaboration. So I think we're at a point whereby we have to evaluate tools that are very similar in terms of usage so that we don't overburden the teacher users.
Absolutely. So at this time, Terence, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen just so we can bring in Fraction Genius just as an example of what is available here. So let me go ahead and bring that in. So let's see here, share. And then that way you can kind of walk us through. So what I went ahead and did here is I just opened it up and I kind of logged in. But I really love the way that this is laid out for teachers. You've got your introduction, you've got the opening activity, you've got the main idea, closing activity. There's assessment, and of course there's comments here, and this would be that comment feedback for you. And so tell us a little bit about this. And I'm a teacher and I'm looking at this for the very first time. What are some of the key points and things that I should be looking at in order to maybe not feel as overwhelmed and have a successful lesson here with my
Right.
students?
Yeah, I would say you definitely start with the introduction. So the introduction tab really gives you a rundown of the whole lesson, anything from outcomes, lesson outcomes, student objectives, what kind of prior knowledge students might need to have. Many of the lessons that we have on Eddy don't explicitly focus on teaching content, right? So a lot of teachers have found it more useful to reinforce content that students already know. So we have a prior knowledge segment. We have all the instructional material available for download. I think a lot of or rather, as a teacher, seeing a lot of lesson packages out there, I think they're great. But at the same time, I'm also asking myself, where's the material? Does that mean I have to create slides from scratch? So we're trying to reduce that for teachers as well. So we have a downloadable slide deck that they can edit, change stuff around. All the student resources are over there. And then the next few tabs on the opening activity, the main activity, and the closing activity is really a rundown of the slide deck and how the lesson should progress according to the slide deck. This is where we had to make a crucial design decision too, right? Because for like hardcore proponents of MakerEd, we're like, we don't want to use slides at all. We just want to facilitate the lesson, and we don't need to have slides at all because that's frontal teaching, and that's like, no, 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 right? But I think we had to take a hard look at who our users were and make some decisions there. So we had many of our users are saying, well, we want the lesson plan to be structured this way, right? That's the most logical way to go through a lesson, to run through the slides and to see how the lesson will be conducted on each slide. And honestly, if I look at myself as a teacher, that's the most intuitive way for me to digest a slide too, right? So that's how we structured it. You also have the option to comment on individual slides. So if you go to the little bubble there, you'll be able to comment on that particular slide to say, oh, I think this is a good kind of teaching move, or I don't think this is a great teaching move. For my high ability learners, I had to do this instead, right? So I think what we want to do is encourage this community that's focused on critiquing and improving lesson packages and lessons at a very specific level. Of course, if you have broader comments on the lesson plan, you can go to the last tab. But I think recently what we've been trying to do in our pilots is encourage teachers to comment on individual slides to say like, oh, well, I think this slide should be improved a little bit. I think this teaching move should be improved, so on and so forth. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, I mean, my right, you can see the subject, the grade, the emerging technology domain, and the different standards. Mhm.
I love this. Terence, I just want to say, like, I really love the way that this is laid out. I know, again, for many teachers, oftentimes it's the makerspace, like you mentioned, it was like, hey, it's kind of like, here's what we're going to do. And it's kind of like a free for all and so on. But then, of course, you have that subset of teachers also that really like things kind of dialed in and, let's go ahead and follow certain steps and everything. And I just really absolutely love the way that this is laid out and it's very well explained. And also the fact that as teachers, you don't have to go and look for those resources. Everything that you need is here for the resources and your lesson plan prep. And one thing that I must say that I really want to commend you on is on these activities where you have the speech bubble to be able to have teachers give you feedback based on what is there to continue to help improve the product and give those suggestions and so on. And I think that's very valuable. And if for a lot of teachers to be able to have their ideas heard or their voice heard and just say, hey, maybe this or this, little tweaks here, little tweaks there, at the end, everybody's going to benefit from that because it's almost a community. We're all learning from each other in maybe not necessarily with directly, but in an indirect way. As the slides get better, it's because we're learning from somebody else and, some that's providing some of that valuable feedback and content. One of the things that I love here too, as well, that I saw in this slide is for this activity, introducing machine learning for kids. And here you have the links and everything is here. You have a tutorial available. You have a step-by-step on how the students will be able to log in, what they're going to do and everything. So, I mean, everything is laid out here for the teacher. And I think that this is very well thought of And so I definitely want to commend you on that, because if this is any indication of what else is there on Eddy, I highly recommend that anybody that's watching us live tonight or is going to be catching this on the replay and watching the video and so on, please make sure that you do go visit eddyforteachers.com so you can go ahead and log in and create or see some of the lessons that are there that you might be able to adapt and adapt and share with your students and kind of work them in into your curriculum. So, Terence, before we continue though, the main question is probably going to be that a lot of people are thinking of is, what's the price? So, can you tell us a little bit about that as far as what teachers might be able to have access to on Eddy for Teachers?
Yeah, I mean the short answer is that it's free. Everything is free, and our revenue model is not based on teachers paying, so it'll be free. Yes, it's free. Re-
Absolutely.
yeah, for those who want to know a bit more, I think our revenue model is based on working with companies like Canva, like basically these companies that we think have a strong resonance with MakerEd. We want to work with them. We piloted with a few of them. Um, so that's kind of the revenue model that we have to kind of showcase their products and work out a partnership with them.
That is
Currently, we
amazing.
have around 40 lesson packages, and we're, we're we're only releasing 1 or 2 lesson packages per week right now because we are gearing up for our next bound, which will involve Gen AI. Um, when we're ready, I'd love to share with your viewers again, just to get a sense of what the reception to that will be. But in a nutshell, we're going to use generative AI to construct our own LLM so that teachers can create their own emerging technology lesson plans.
That is amazing. And so, guys, those of you that are watching, those of you that are catching this in the replay, or whether you're listening, definitely eddyforteachers.com. As you heard, it is at an amazing sale price of free 99. That's right, free 99. So, thank you, Terrence, for
While
what you
stops
do
last.
and the collaboration that you have with all of these companies. So, I want you to check this out. You can go here and filter by obviously subject, you can filter by grade, you can filter by domain, you can filter by standard, and you're going to be able to find lessons here. If you notice, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, and everything is there, for you. It's provided. They definitely took, just really good care of us as educators in providing everything that you need within these lessons. So, Terrence, I am really thankful for your work. I'm thankful for that vision that you have, that passion that you have to be able to bring this into our education spaces, into our classrooms, so that the teachers can engineer these amazing learning experiences and that students can also partake in these learning experiences where they're not only learning some tech skills, but they're learning those other skills, like we mentioned, the collaboration, communication, that create the creativity, but also the fact that they can have a learning artifact that they can go ahead and keep and take with them from year to year, and creating a portfolio, and just having some work to show and showing progress and showing growth. So, Terrence, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and what you've done through edmaker, and what you're doing what you're doing with Eddy for Teachers, for our teachers. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and share a little bit. I guess if there's one thing I want to say also is that we're not perfect. We were only launched in June, so I know that a lot of founders like to blow themselves up and maybe but I'm very cognizant that we're only a few months old. This product is only 5 months old, so we're always on the lookout for feedback. If you go on Eddy and you think there's something that needs work on, there is a widget at the side, a Hotjar widget. Drop us a feedback. Drop us your thoughts. I personally go and look at each and every one of them because we've gotten great feedback from teachers and other users that way. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, excellent. And I just want to share with you here, my friend Tanya says, I just found, it says liked resources, and then she's here. I'm about to unlock a badge already. And okay, so her question here also, she says, it says, can we save lessons?
Yeah, you can. So I think she found it the it's a heart sign.
Mhm.
It's basically saving the lessons. And I think she also said she would love more lower grade lessons.
Yes. Yeah, she's
Hmm.
a second grade teacher. So I know for sure that she would definitely enjoy more lower grade lessons. But again, she is gonna be one that is gonna be putting this through everything, and she will definitely give you feedback for sure. That's how great Tanya is. So thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us and for checking out Eddy for Teachers. Well, Terence, it's been an amazing conversation. I thank you so much again, like I mentioned, for just really having a wonderful vision and bringing it to fruition. It's not always easy. There are many people that have or see a solution to a problem, and maybe they don't have a way to be able to bring that. But I'm glad that you were able to, bring your vision to light and to bring it to us as educators, because this is something that's very valuable. And like I said, for myself, being in the classroom and being able to do these activities, I feel like I haven't seen too much, at least on my socials, on anybody really doing a lot with maker spaces and so on. But hopefully, this again will definitely reignite some of those flames, for creativity, collaboration, communication within our classrooms for our students, and just really reignite that spark for. The maker movement. So that's wonderful. So thank you, Terence. I really appreciate you. But before we go, Terence, I want to end the show with our last three questions that I ask all my guests. So hopefully you are ready. So here we go. Question number one, Terence. As we know, every superhero has a weakness, and we know that kryptonite was Superman's greatest weakness. So I want to ask you, Terence, through your observation and through your work in the education space, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
For me, it would be kind of not giving students the opportunity to reflect and improve. I've seen that way too often in high stakes testing situations. So I think that leaning and testing on scores is not a great way to improve broad educational outcomes. Testing is going to be important. Testing is important for formative and summative purposes. But there should be a means to an end. A lot of folks and stakeholders think of it as an end in itself.
Excellent. Great answer. Thank you so much, Terence. All right. Question number two, Terence, is if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Wow, this one is I had to think of a while for this one. It's not even I think the idea of fail fast, fail forward is something that I've really kind of internalized ever since leaving the public sector. So I think when I was in the public sector, there was a lot of resistance to that, and you can understand why. You're managing hundreds of thousands of students. The revenue is huge, but if you fail fast and fail forward by listening to your users, you're going to come up ultimately with a better product. Um, which I think we definitely experienced with Eddy. You should see the first few versions of Eddy. It was like, and we show it in front of people, and they're like, no, 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 you have to change this. And we're like, okay. But that whole experience was super invaluable.
Perfect. Well, that's great. And that is definitely great advice. So thank you so much for sharing that. And the last question, Terence, is if you had to author a book starting tomorrow, what would your book be about?
I think it would be about how maker-centric education is important. Well, how maker-centric education can be applied to a variety of systems, right? You don't have to be a policymaker to do that. I think a lot of folks think that you need to be in a position of power to be able to institute these broad changes. But I think as educators, as parents, as anyone as a stakeholder who is a stakeholder in education, I think you can make small tweaks, small changes, and I think I would love to share them with more people about how to make that happen.
Excellent. Great answer. Well, Terence, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure. For all our audience members, again, make sure you check out eddyforteachers.com. Please make sure you check them out. Of course, all of that information will be in the show notes. Tanya, also for joining us here with a lot of the comments. I know we had a lot more viewers also that maybe they didn't comment, but thank you so much for joining us live as well. And for all our audience members, those of you that are going to be watching this on the replay or catching it on Spotify, as always, thank you so much for making My EdTech Life what it is today. Please make sure you visit our website, guys, at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 246 wonderful episodes with educators, creators, entrepreneurs, founders, entrepreneurs. We've got a little bit of everything for all of you where you can take some knowledge nuggets from and you can sprinkle them on to what you are already doing great. So thank you so much, as always, for all of your support. Please make sure you follow us on all socials at My EdTech Life. So you can check us out on Twitter, Facebook. You can check us out on Instagram, on Threads as well. So please make sure that you're following us in case you haven't done so already. And again, please make sure you jump over to our YouTube channel and give us a subscribe or a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscriptions. So thank you so much, as always, for all of your support. And again, guys, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.